Hi and welcome to this second video on full vocal remixing. I'm James from F9 Audio and the Freemasons, and in the first video we already made a great start. We got some drums up, we got all the vocals time stretched, and we have them sounding like this.
Miss you every day. I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it.
Now, before we go anywhere, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to just cut that first line of the vocal out. It's a little quiet, and seeing it's the entry point to our verse, I just want to make sure that that is a little bit louder. So we're going to go 1.7 dB.
Miss you every day. I can't take it when we're apart.
That's great. Any problems like that on the vocal that you find, particularly if you go through and there's kind of odd cuts in there, clicks, that kind of thing, go through and sort them out right at the beginning. They'll only annoy you throughout the whole process if we do. Okay, let's get on to the fun stuff. And what I want to do is pick out some interesting points and rhythms of the vocal just against the drums, no other parts, and we're going to have a look at if we can do some clever programming around them. Let's listen at the end of the chorus.
I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so lonely without you every day. I've been so alone, feeling so alone. I've been so lonely, I miss you every day.
Now, we've already got a nice cymbal over that part that's kind of doing that classic house feel. But let's create even more of a drum fill that works perfectly with the vocal. Now, what we're actually going to do is take the rhythm of the last vocal line.
I've been so lonely, I miss you every day.
And apply that to the rhythm of the kick drum so that it reinforces that part. Now, these videos are edited, so I'm just going to speed through this. We just want to get you to the end results.
I've been so alone, feeling so alone. I've been so lonely, I miss you every day.
So just a simple trick, but it's perfectly reinforced that vocal rhythm at the end, so it's become a hook. Please remember, rhythm is as much of a hook as melody is, and it's provided a drum fill into the next section, so we've got arrangement going on as well. Now let's have a look at the end of the verse and see if there's anything we can do there.
Loving me, holding me, needing me. I've been so lonely since you went away.
Okay, so there's not much rhythm to play with there, but maybe we can do something else. How about if we actually extend the rise up to the chorus by about 4 bars? And I'm just going to copy everything apart from the kick.
Loving me, holding me, needing me. I've been so lonely since you went away.
So just with that one simple move, we've created a little area of tension where you can feel it build and something's going to happen, and then you can fall into the chorus like that. Now, the reason I do all of this stuff quite early on is that it can set the tone for your overall remix. And remember one thing. The computer does not make the remix for you. Your brain does. And if you can start to map out how this thing's going to work right from the very beginning, you'll find the whole process to be much more enjoyable. So now let's kind of segue those gaps with a great big long fat tape delay. Now, what I've done is create a copy of the lead vocal track, and I have pulled part of the lead vocal down and set up a little effects chain. It starts with a tape delay with a nice dubby delay on it, a sample delay with only delay on one side. So the left-hand channel has 0, the right-hand channel has 355 samples on it, so it's going to be a little bit like a Haas delay that's going to create a wide stereo image. And then we've got some direction mixer just pulling everything in a little bit. Now, I'm doing it this way rather than mucking about with things like aux buses and that kind of thing, because we have unlimited tracks within the system, so we may as well use them. So running effects in parallel like this means you have full automation control over them, and also you can bounce them down at any point, which is what we're going to do in a minute. Let's have a listen.
Oh yeah, loving me, holding me, needing me.
it's really hit into distortion there just at the end. So let's get this under control. We're going to add some volume automation. Now, rather than automate the fader, I want to get you into the habit of automating gains on plugin chains. The reason being is then you've always still got the fader free should you need to re-level stuff whilst you're working. So we're going to use the gain plugin to do that, and I'm actually going to drop a mute in at the end. Let's just have a listen to that.
Needing me. I've been so lonely.
Okay, nice. That's got the volume under control a little bit. Now, the one thing that I really want to do is automate the delay on the right channel of that sample delay. That's going to create a bigger Hass effect and widen the whole thing up as it happens through this passage.
Holding me, needing me. I've been so lonely since you went away.
Now we've got all that nice bit of automation, I'm actually going to bounce this down to a new audio region so we can do something else with it. Make sure that you have the checkbox include audio effects tail to get the delay that's not actually covered by the region, and it will bounce down nicely like this. Now I'm going to take the fade tool and put a fade right at the last quarter bar of the actual effect we've just created, but I'm going to flip it so that instead of fading down, it's actually slowing down.
I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so.
Okay, so we're doing quite well even at this basic stage. We've got some rhythm elements reinforcing areas of the vocal, and we've got a nice little tension build there. We're already starting to inject personality into this work. Now let's set up a full arrangement, and the reason I say let's do that first before we even start on the music is that it gets you out 100% of that loop trap where you're just looking or watching or listening to the same thing go round and round and round. So let's do that right now. So my top tip for this entire process is to take regular breaks. I live in Brighton, so I've just been down to the seafront and had a walk around, and I'm able to formulate a little bit of a plan of how I want this remix to go. If you can get it right in your head, you'll find it so much easier to put this together rather than staring just at a computer screen. So I want to use this first set of drums as an intro. So after that initial intro, I'm going to go to a breakdown chorus. I'm just going to drop the main vocal in there. It's a great way of introducing the hook. And then we're going to come back out and feed back into a groove section. Now, this is one of the beauties of using the F9 Drumtrax, is that I can just fire this stuff around. I know it's going to sound great as it's put together, and it allows you to work nice and quickly.
I've been so lonely since you went away.
Now, I am going to leave another tension gap between bars 41 and 45, so we've got a build up into the groove section. And I'm just going to come and copy the main drums from this chorus section later on over here into this space. Okay, so after that groove section, that bearing in mind has those nice syncopated drums there, so we're keeping them. I'm now actually going to delete from this point all the way to the verse. Now let's just go a little bit forward and work out what we're going to do about this first main chorus.
I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so lonely without you every day.
So I think we're going to try another trick here, and we're going to pretend that it's another breakdown chorus and then slam straight back into the beats pretty quickly. So to do that, I'm actually going to set up a copy chorus. So let's copy the vocals across and then grab the drums with those nice syncopated beats. And whilst we're here, I'm just going to copy the verse over it and make another section for that. Okay, so now let's do the clever edit on this these double chorus sections. The first thing I want to do is take a copy of those breakdown drums and push them further up so I've got them safe and I can always get back to them.
I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so lonely without you every day.
So that's the point that I want the beats to slam back in, bar 85. So I'm literally just going to chop that entire section out of the arrange page, because the second half of the chorus has the beats in, it will segue beautifully.
I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so lonely without you every day. I've been so alone, feeling so alone.
Now that is already starting to sound quite special, and it gives me a great idea for the rest of the musical production, that we kind of accentuate that sudden change. So literally everything cuts off and it goes back to the groove at that point. Now let's look at a major breakdown section in the middle. Okay, so I just stopped the video there for a moment and I've completed a little bit more arrangement work. I've created a large breakdown section with a bit more of a build up to it, including some bass drum repeats, and now I've taken our vocal spin idea from the end of the first verse and really turned that effect up to 11. I'm using Logic's built-in tape delay in diffuse mode, so it's much more of a characterful feedback. Once again, it's got the hash delay on it and some stereo imaging, and all of this stuff is automated so that it really spins a great big kind of texture out into this breakdown. Let's have a listen.
Loving me, holding me, needing me.
Now, please note, all of these arrangement ideas are just sketches at the moment. Past this large breakdown, it goes back into the full set of beats and some choruses, and we've got a short outro. But here's the important thing. If I zoom this back in, you can see that we've already got an arrangement on the screen. And mentally, this takes a massive workload off of your brain, because it means you've done an awful lot of the work. Now, this is an extreme version working with just the vocals and the drums. So in other words, there's no music at all. But give it a try just once and see how you get on with it. Okay, so let's tidy up now, and we're going to bounce this delay down first, and then I'm going to try another little trick that I've learned over the years. Because this delay is quite textural, there's going to be a part of it that's going to look quite smooth. So we're going to take that bit out. I'm going to use this section here, and then I'm going to create a brand new audio track. And I'm actually going to put that one little section, copy it down, and loop it throughout the entire track. Now, what this is going to do is going to take a kind of harmonic and a textural note out of that delay spin and run it throughout the entire track. And because it belongs with the vocal, it should actually, or it's been sourced from the vocal, it should actually sit across the whole record. Okay, so now let's just play back and see how that works.
Can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart. I can't stand it another day. I can't wait till you're back in my arms again. Loving me, holding me. Oh yeah. Loving me, holding me, needing me.
So that's come out great. It's a note that we can run throughout the entire track. It will work with all the vocals. It's sourced from the vocals, so it's nice and organic and will sit well against synth stuff later on. So now I want to do some basic vocal processing before I start working, because these vocals are incredibly dry and you need to be inspired when you're doing the other part of the creative stuff. So I'm going to stop now and we'll come back and look at what we've done. Okay, so we're back, and I've made quite a lot of changes here and added some effects to the vocals. So what I'm going to do now is play through, and then we'll talk about all the stuff that I've done.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart. I can't stand it another day. I can't wait till you're back in my arms again. Loving me, holding me. Oh yeah. Loving me, holding me, needing me. I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so lonely without you every day. I've been so alone, feeling so alone. I've been so lonely, I miss you every day.
Okay, so what I've actually done on each section of the lead vocal is create a whole series of processes in parallel. So this first one, this light blue, which I'm just going to solo now, is our main lead vocal. Now it's hardly got anything on it. In fact, that EQ is pretty blank. That should actually have some roll off on there. The one thing I would say is always get used to rolling off on lead vocals, because you never know if there's going to be any mic handling and other kind of noises in the very low frequency ranges that are going to screw things up. So by getting rid of everything up to a certain point, you remove that from the bass spectrum and everything will sit better. Okay, next to that, I've got a completely perfect parallel that has been brightened up, and we've had some of this low mids taken out of it. Now, nearly all cardioid microphones that are used to record vocals will spit out some kind of extra weight and some unwanted boxiness somewhere between 220 maybe and about 400 hertz. Just keep your eye on it, and if you see it pop up or you're hearing this kind of woolliness, just try EQing around those points to remove it. Now, I've brightened this up dramatically, or not, it doesn't look too dramatic, but trust me, it is. And then it's going into a compressor that I'm slamming quite a lot. This is the EQ'd vocal and compressed vocal by itself.
I can't take it when we're apart.
So much thinner and got quite a lot of bite because of that compression. I add that to our main vocal. Now I'm running an effects chain in parallel. This is what we get.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it.
And so you can hear the difference. I'm now going to mute the compressed and EQ'd version between different lines.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart. I can't stand it another day. I can't wait till you're back in my arms again.
So you hear that bite come back into the vocal. Now this is the trick of nearly every single professional mixing engineer that I know, and that's adding parallel processing to things like vocals to really get them to sit through. The great thing is you have fader control over this, so if you want to push it up for one particular word, you can automate it. Now, one thing that I do want to say here is on all of these processes, I've tried to keep the resulting fader level close back to zero, and I've done that by either using gain plugins like this, or actually using gains on the EQ channel, master gains on the EQ channel. The reason being is that any fader is at its most useful point when it's around zero. Now that's because the response of a fader is not a straight line. So when it's around its 0 point, small changes in its position will mean small changes in level. If you're all the way down here and you're kind of at -20 or -16 or minus something like that, tiny, tiny movements, even pixels worth of movements, can be a couple of dB. So that's pretty much impossible for anyone to get an accurate balance. Gain staging like this is a vital part of modern workflow. Now I'm going to add some modulation to the vocal. For this effect, I'm using Soundtoy's excellent microshift, which does a great job of emulating the harmonizers that originally came out in the 80s. It creates a number of doubles of the vocals and pitches them slightly down and slightly up, and that can create a wonderful chorusing effect.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart.
Now we add all three of those together. Let's see what we got.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart.
Now I'm sure you can hear that that's actually quite subtle, but it does a great little job of just thickening and widening the vocals. Now whilst we're talking about some width, but before we get into the big reverbs and delays, I just want to show you another trick that I absolutely love, and I'm going to pull up Soundtoy's Echo Boy to do this, and it's just on its default setting with a little bit of low cut and a little bit of high cut, set 100% wet, and then just paired against the vocal. This is the delay by itself.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake.
You're not going to hear that properly until we put it in with the rest, so let's do that.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart. I can't stand it.
Now that's a great little trick to add some instant vibe onto your vocals before you get set on long delays and longer reverbs. Now please bear in mind, I am using Soundtoys plugins here, but you can do an awful lot of this with just the stock tools that come with your DAW. Now, to show you what I mean, let me demonstrate how we can create that harmonizing effect in Logic. I've got two copies of the vocal. One of them is going through this pitch shifter, which is set to -14 on the sense of the pitch. So in other words, no semitones, just a little bit of detune. The second one, which is panned quite hard right, is being pitch shifted up 14 cents. So when you play them together, you get this.
I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so lonely without you every day.
Now you add that to the main chorus vocals, this is what you get.
I've been so lonely since you went away. I've been so lonely without you every day.
You get a similar version to the thickening effect we got from the Soundtoys plugin, but also with some kind of odd artifacts thrown in. There's a little bit of delay floating around in there, so it adds even more spatial move. Don't discount the stuff that's already built into your DAW. Also, they tend to be incredibly low latency, which is going to be really important. Vocal reverbs now, and we've definitely gone posh. This is the UAD Lexicon 224.
You took my heart, I can't stand it. Another day, I can't wait till you're back.
Now, it's not very loud, but you can hear it adds that complete class into the vocal, and suddenly it's starting to sound like a record. Now, that's not to say you can't get a similar effect out of stock plugins, but every now and again you'll find a couple of processes that, to do with vocals, that you're just going to have to spend some money on. And if you're serious about vocal production and you're serious about vocal remixing, every now and again it's just worth biting the bullet and digging in. Now, a couple of tips about setting reverbs for vocals. First of all, always try the pre-delay actually quite high if you're using a fairly long reverb tail. That will push the reverb tail back slightly. It keeps the front of the words clear and the diction nice and present so that everything is easily understood. The second one is watch the amount of top end that goes into a reverb, because you don't want the S's going in and swamping out in this big shh. I've seen an awful lot of engineers DS reverb sends, and when you're on a parallel channel like that, obviously this is really, really easy. Now, the Lexicon 224 internally didn't have a high sampling rate, so a lot of those problems are kind of removed from the off. One of the reasons, again, why it's on so many productions. Right, so now for one of the most important effects that you can apply to a vocal. A nice delay. I'm going to use Native Instruments' fantastic replica plugin that if you put it in vintage digital mode and control the filters, you can get some great results for. This is it in action on our lead vocal.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart. I can't stand it another day. I can't wait till you're back in my arms again. Loving me.
Now, you may be wondering why there's all these chops and different colours on this bottom channel that holds the delay. Now, that's because I've changed the volume levels of some of the different blocks. So, for example, the green ones have been dropped in level that is then feeding into the delay line. This gives us a great degree of control because it allows us on a line-by-line or even word-by-word basis to control the volume level, firing into the delay and the resulting delay. Very powerful. Let me show you what I mean. Quiet.
When we're apart,
Louder.
I can't fake it.
Quiet.
You took my heart.
Louder.
I can't stand it another day.
And so on.
I can't wait till you're back in my arms again. Loving me, holding me.
So let's hear everything now together and you'll see what I mean.
I can't take it when we're apart. I can't fake it. You took my heart. I can't stand it another day. I can't wait till you're back in my arms again. Loving me, holding me. Oh yeah, loving me, holding me, needing me.
So now I'm sure you can see the power of having parallel processing like that on a lead vocal. You can dig in on any single part and brighten it using the first parallel. You can make it a bit rounder by bringing up some of the harmonizer. We can fatten it up a little bit by using those wide eighth delays. We can make it a little bit more wet by just pushing up the reverb for one word. Basically, we have a ton of control. Now, why is this important and why haven't I just used the full acapella with the delays on it? Well, time stretching will always give some kind of artifact. And when you're using large stretches, let's say from, I don't know, say 100 BPM up to say 124, those can be quite acute and actually sound quite bad. There's another thing as well, and this is where I'm keen to talk about the politics of remixing. When you're remixing at the very highest level for major artists on major record labels, a large number of people are going to come in and have comments on your work. First of all, you're going to have the A&R man that commissioned the mix in the first place. Then it's probably going to go back to the artist management. There may be 2 or 3 people that are going to have their say there. And then eventually it's going to go probably back to the artist for clearance. Not every time, but some of the world's biggest artists have complete veto over their work. Now that means that you're always going to get this series of comments back, and a lot of it is going to center around the vocals. The first thing that any single artist I've ever worked with says is, can we turn the vocals up? Can we do this here? Can we do that? And if you're using an a cappella, that can be tough, because if they want balances changed between the backing vocals and the lead vocals, or they want more process on their vocal or less, if you're just using the a cappella, you are stuffed and you're left with what was there on the original mix that may not actually work in your remix production. So having all of this level of control and having it running pretty much constantly can be vital. And that's why I've developed this principle of applying the effects in a parallel form. Now, some of these processes are going to be generating latency, and from when we come to the real creative process of putting the music in, we want that latency gone. So what I'm going to do is actually bounce those processes down. But now I'm hoping that you can see why I actually keep a completely different set of processes between the verses and the chorus, because often you've got different music playing and you may want the results to sound different sonically. For example, if the verse is going over your drums and then the chorus comes into a breakdown, you may want a fat vocal sound. So to do that, you're going to need different sets of processing, and this is the most efficient way of doing it, in my opinion. This is a higher level of quality. There is one also very important point. If you say you're doing a club mix and the artist absolutely loves it, they may actually want to go out and PA that club mix, in which case they're going to want the lead vocal either removed from the mix or brought down in level so they can sing along to it. Now, if you're using an a cappella, that's almost impossible to do, because even if you could duck everything in the verses, when it comes to the choruses, you can't just take the lead vocal out. You can if you're using the dry individual parts with processing like this. If you're interested in vocal productions or vocal remixing, developing your own techniques like this, in my opinion, is vital these days. Not only will it help with the political aspect, but say someone else is going to mix your record and they want to take your effects apart and maybe rebuild certain sections. Having them created in parallel like this means it's just a case of muting certain effects or bouncing them all down individually, instead of having to go through the plugin chains on one particular channel and mute things out, which can change balances. Now, if you're wondering who I am and why you should listen to me through all of this, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and I've done well over 250 full vocal remixes in my time at every single level of the industry, right up to the very big guns. I know what can happen, I know how ridiculous it can get, and these are the techniques that I've developed over time to make sure every eventuality is covered. Before we move on, one quick tip that I just missed there. Slapped across the end of that long delay chain is a compressor, and the compressor is actually side-chained against the dry lead vocal. Now that means the compressor is going to duck when the dry lead vocal is in, and then in the gaps it's going to spring back, so that allows that wet chain to then kind of fill in the gaps. It's a great processing trick to learn to keep a fairly wet vocal sound but still have everything nice and clear.
Arms again, loving me, holding me, oh yeah, loving me.
And last but certainly not least, I've picked out one word and sent it into a massive reverb thanks to the Valhalla vintage verb. A great little trick. I've heard it tons on a lot of LA mixing, particularly on stuff like the Weekends material, where just one word suddenly fires into this massive reverb. In fact, it's so good, let's do it on the last word as well.
Oh yeah, loving me, holding me, needing me.
Now you've got to trust me on this. It's this level of attention to detail that will set your work apart from the pack. So that's the first video on the production of the actual remix, and we're already in great shape. The vocals are all in the right place. They're nice and vibey, so whilst I do the main creative work, it kind of sounds like they're a record already, which I find personally very, very important. And we've got the beginnings of an arrangement. It's probably going to change, but it's there, and it's got us out of that kind of dreaded loop phase. Now, the next part I can't actually do with screen capture on or whilst cameras are rolling. I just find it's a very personal thing. There are a couple of things that I'm going to do. I'm going to pull out some of the rhythms that are in the vocals and reinforce them with some of the bass parts. I want this to sound quite techy and some great big long reverberated sounds, really adding atmosphere, and the music will change in the middle in the breakdown section. It's always good to go somewhere completely different at some point throughout the record rather than just chug along. Now, the one thing that I do want to say is if you're one of those producers that, whilst you're working, sits there worrying that you feel like you've got the rest of the industry on your shoulders going, well, that's not a very good clap sound, is it? Well, how come you made that rubbish bass sound where everyone else's bass sounds are really good? And why isn't this good? And why are you doing that, etc., etc.? You have to trust me. Every single person that I know that is good at this suffers from those kind of thoughts and those kind of worries. That is the struggle of being an artist. This is an artistic and creative endeavour, and this is well documented across the entire industry. Some of you won't be like that. You'll just get on with it. I wish I could be like you, but I'm not. I do worry, and I've always had those stresses. So if that does happen to you, honestly, trust me, it is shared by an awful lot of people. And even large artists like deadmau5 have spoken out about the kind of emotional stress that producing records actually puts on you. So you're in good company. Anyway, thanks for watching, and don't forget to watch the rest of the videos on this remix.